Sorry about that, everybody. Nothing like having a little feedback early in the morning. So sorry about that. I hope that wasn't too horrific on your end. Oh my goodness. I hope you guys didn't hear that too much. So sorry about that. Something was not, yeah, some entrance, right? Woohoo! It's New Year's. So let's have a big, crazy, I don't know, echoey sound. So sorry about that, you guys. I don't think that I had a plug that was um, completely plugged in. So again, so sorry about that. Let me just fix this real quick. You all can talk amongst yourselves. But yes, I tried to. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me as I'm fixing this here. I'll tell you that we are broadcasting in so many places today. We are in, of course, all of the bead shop regular places that you can find us every Wednesday and Friday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific. We're in our bead shop group, the bead table. We're on our bead shop page, and we are on, of course, our bead shop YouTube channel. We are also broadcasting in a couple of special places. Hello to everyone who's watching us on the Great Bead Extravaganza, both the page and the YouTube channel. And I thought I'd throw my own personal YouTube and page up there, Kate Richburg Jewelry Educator. So we would all be here together for our final New Year's celebration. So again, I'm so sorry, you guys, about that rather exciting audio that we had at the beginning. So again, forgive me for that. But I promise that this project is going to be worth the wait. Okay, so we are going to be working on today every New Year's or every, I'm wearing this fancy dress here at home. I'm coming at you from my home sewing studio here. But I put on something fancy, but I'm sitting on it a little funny. But as you guys saw, if you got your bead shop newsletter today, actually, let me turn that around so it's the right direction. You saw that we launched some new buttons that you can see here. I have a brand new knot to teach you guys, and I'm going to show you the top view of this, so don't worry about that. And then we're going to talk about doing some laddering, and we're going to call this, as I like to call it, the year-end wrap. Okay, so it's going to be an epic wrap bracelet. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So those of you who are just joining us from various places around the web, let me show you here. You can find us on our social at beadshop.com, on our Facebook, the Bead Table. You can like and subscribe us to the YouTube channel if you're watching us live or on the replay. Please hit that like and subscribe button. It'd be great to have you so you don't miss any content. And of course, for everything that I'm using today, you can find all of the product and the project over on our website at beadshop.com. You can also find me. They'll resume in the new year, you guys. I'm working on my home studio. You see me sometimes go back and forth between my home studio here in Fresno, California, to our offices in Redwood City, California. But after the new year, you'll see more metalsmithing content on my personal Kate Richburg YouTube as well. So we're getting all that studio and everything worked on. So hopefully I'll be back with the torch sometime soon as well. So, but you can find me come rain or come shine every Wednesday and Friday right here on all of these outlets for um, beadshop.com at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. Sometimes I'm alone and sometimes I have guests. Anyway, so I've got my coffee, which I'm sure is a little loud as I drink it, but thank you for bearing with me. As you know, I need to be caffeinated, of course, to do some creating. So I want to show you, let me put this camera, this second camera in, and hopefully we won't have any feedback this time, though you never know. It's always an adventure. So here we go. Yes, look at how smooth that was. And let me get some extra lighting coming up here. I don't want it to be too crazy bright. There we go. That looks pretty good. And I hope you guys can notice I have been working on our internet connection here in the home studio. So I think that we are even better better than ever. So hopefully this connection will be nice and clear for you guys. So the way that this came about, of course, as usual, Drea and I are chatting about, what we're going to do for the year-end project, the last broadcast of the year for 2021. And Drea says, well, you are going to do a year-end wrap. And I said, oh, well, okay, I guess we are. So that's where the year-end wrap, I've done it, I think, a couple of years in a row. And then I got a message from our Emily, our dear Emily Miller, who will be returning in 2022. I promise you'll be able to see her and her wonderful projects. Emily sent me a tutorial that she had found online, just a kind of a random tutorial. I don't even have the um, what do I want to say, the original to attribute. It was just kind of a simple, here's a little quickie, I don't know, it was a little snippet of video. And this was a knot that they were doing with Chinese knotting cord. Okay. And I thought, oh, and they were using two different colors and stuff. So it was a little different. So I thought, well, I'm going to adapt that and make that my very own. So I used it for the first wrap of this year-end wrap, and I'm going to show you how I did it. And you can see here, let me unlash this. You can see here, it's a really beautiful, it's kind of a stitch, part knot, I think. And I'm using, instead of Chinese knotting cord, I'm using leather cord, and you can see how nice the back looks. So this has infinite possibilities, right? I want to do something maybe that has beads in it, maybe something that has beads along the back. I'm not sure, but I'm really excited about the possibilities. So thanks, Em, for this little inspiration that you sent over. So I also outlined, because some of you may be new to watching this and either new to beading or new to wrap bracelets. So I wanted to share with you, I wrote down a few things here that I'm going to go over. So I'm kind of organized in my broadcast today, which I know it seems crazy talk there. But what we're going to do here is I want to show you the techniques that we're going to go over today, and you can see they're listed there. We're going to talk about any wrap bracelet, right? And this kind of applies to any wrap except for the specific figure S knot. But we're going to talk about connecting a button, how I connected the button to this particular one. We're going to talk about this figure S knot that I've got here. That's what I'm calling it anyway. I'm going to show you how to weave a new thread in and an old thread out, especially like in this little section that I'm showing below. If you run out of thread in the middle, I know I've shown you that before, but it never hurts to go over that again. I'm going to also, one of the basics, the flat macrame knot, which is this one, beaded or not. And we're going to do a silk wrap. Okay. So if you have all of those techniques in your jewelry making arsenal, you're going to be just fine. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Then the materials that I'm using, you guys, if you jump over to Beadshop, this project is called Garnet Gala, hence my kind of garnet outfit I'm wearing today. But you can find it in under bracelets on Beadshop. Right now, if you're watching this live, you'll see it on the front cover, the front page of the website. What I'm using is an assortment of 8/0 seed beads, a strand of 4mm fire polish, some Checkmate's tiles. You can see them sitting right over here. Some bugle beads, these guys here. I love bugles in wraps. You can see there they are. And some 11/0. And these happen to be 11/0 delicas. And I'll show you the specifics in just a second. Then you're going to need some thread, and I'm using Ceylon and Fine. I'm using KO in the red, this rich red. You're going to need something to string them with, so I have sharp size 10, GS Hypo cement, an awl, thread snips, clampers, and a design tray, and of course a velvet design board as my surface here. Then the last thing you want to talk about are the steps to creating this piece. And I'm going to talk you through these steps. Number one, you're going to create a color palette of whatever beads you like. Don't be limited to the choices that I've made or the choices that I've made for this project. You can really do just about anything goes in a wrap bracelet. So think about the color first. Then you're going to decide the number of wraps. I'm going to walk you through that. I'm going to talk to you about how I decided which thread and stitches I'm going to use. And then I'm going to measure for the approximate length of the finished bracelet. Okay, so that's all she wrote there. So let's take a look here at the bead choices and stuff that I've made. So let me go back to the comments and see if, okay, so people have questions about these Checkmate's tiles. Are they the same as the Miyuki Tila beads? Okay. So they're not, but you can use them instead of, okay? The Tila beads that you have seen or that you're familiar with, that's a Japanese bead. And I'm trying to see if I have any here. I don't have any sitting here with me, but the Checkmate's tiles, for those of you who have been watching me for a while, know that I love a vintage bead. So this Checkmate's tile is a bead that's been made for many, many years. There's the two holes you can see, and it's a little thicker. Let me get my caliper so you can see. And do I have, I might have, let me see as I'm standing up to grab my caliper. Yes, I do. Let me grab this. I brought a few samples and things home, so I do have some things to show you. In this lariat, you know, we've been on a lariat kick. This is a lariat that I did on Beads, Baubles, and Jewels a couple of years ago. Okay, so this is the Tila. Can you see that here, right here? And so this one, if I turn on my caliper, is about 5 millimeters in width and a little over 1.5 millimeters in depth. Okay? The Checkmates are 6.3 in width, and then in thickness, they're a little thicker. Can you see that? It's 3 millimeters. But they both have two holes, and they'd be interchangeable for this project. Mel is asking, why do I not have these red tile beads? I know, they are so great. They're not coated, they're just red glass. They're so simple, but I thought red would be a great color to end this, of the last project of the season of the year. So these red beads, I think, look just exquisite. You also are going to need, I didn't put it on the list because I made that list in haste and didn't consult my list that's on the website, you're going to need a button. Okay, now this button, this is a new one. We've just launched, if you're watching this live, we've launched it. Today is Wednesday, December 29th. We just launched a whole bunch of check glass buttons yesterday on the website, and they are so delightful. Janice and I decided it was time we needed new buttons, so we just bought some, right? We said, what the heck, we're just going to do it. So this button really formed almost every decision I made for this actual bracelet. So this button, it's big. It is about 22.5 millimeters here. And, you know, it's nice and heavy. It's a little over 3 millimeters in thickness. Now, the thing about these buttons here, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see how the back of this button, the shank isn't very large? And Drea pointed this out when I was looking at all of the things I had chosen and everything. Drea said, "You know that this button only has a 1 millimeter hole in the shank, don't you?" It's hard to see, hard to get it to focus. There we go. And I went, "Oh, okay. Well, no problem. I'll take care of it when I make the piece. I'm not going to worry." So I'm going to show you how I made this connection. So you can use a button that has, this hole is super tiny, super, super tiny. It's kind of hard for you to see, but the leather cord wouldn't go through it. Usually with a button shank, I just put the leather cord through it, start my macrame, and off we go. So this, I had to kind of be a little creative. And so I thought one of the first beads that I chose for this project was these ADOTs, right? And so I used this 8-4204. I think this is the Duracoat Champagne here. And I thought that really brought out all of this beautiful gold in this button. This ADOT is what's going to be the constant throughout the design of my piece, so that it kind of has a continuous thread running through. You can see I've done it here. I've added it here on this little connection area. Then I've put it in this wrap. So throughout, sprinkled throughout this wrap, you're going to see these ADOTs, okay? And you're going to see them kind of give us a continuity in design. So that's why I chose this one. Then I went and I chose some more ADOTs, and I just chose what I liked, right? So I chose some red. Now, you saw these tiles, these Checkmates tiles. They're super bright, right? But I figured all colors kind of go with all colors, right? I mean, especially if it's in that same color family. So I did some bright red with these Checkmates tiles. Then I did some reds that were maybe a little more subdued, like these guys here. This is the 8-4270. I'm sorry I don't have their real color names, but if you jump over to Beadshop, you'll see that whole listing by color name as well. So see, there's those reds. Those reds kind of have a rosy hue to them right here. Janice, I don't know if you can see, but our buddy Jean Yates is also watching on Facebook. Miss Jean, it's great to have you. Always a supporter of beadshop.com over the years. Thank you so much, Jean. She would always, when she was writing articles and things, would always include us in those. So we're always thankful for that, and always glad for your friendship over the years, and all of you guys who have watched us so many years. But we always appreciated, Jean, those wonderful mentions that you give to us. Helped really grow our international standing, I think. Here we have now some accent colors that I went with. So I established our reds, okay? And the red I chose some Greek leather, okay? And the Greek leather is the garnet, but you could use any leather. And I'm going to talk about this particular leather in just a second when I do the stitch, okay, the leather knot. Um, so once I chose, oh, and then the reds, I grabbed this Delica in a cut, and I'm going to use, I wanted something tiny to add a little dash of red. I'm going to use this in my next section. So you're going to see kind of why I used this tiny little 11 knot. Sometimes I'll probably be cursing it as I'm working with it because it's so flippin' small, right? But the result is definitely going to be worth it. So you can see those there, right? And it's a nice kind of cranberry kind of color for it. Yes, this is the dyed magenta. Thanks, Pam. I love those. Love, love, love. Then I needed an accent. And so I went to the wall when I was in the office and I just looked. And I also looked at what we had kind of in ready-made finished pieces, samples and stuff. And I thought, you know what? It's kind of an unusual choice. Let me choose kind of this dusty pink and purpley kind of color. So this Checkmate's tiles here, this is the gray brown. It kind of has a pinky gray tone to it. I chose this is the 1865, the gray gold luster, I think, works really beautifully. And then I got the bugle, this 2034, definitely a dusty pink color. Then I went to the wall of fire polish and I got the 4mm flamingo. And I felt like this needed a little bit of New Year's bling to it. So I've got that, right? And so here, let me pour these guys out too. Let me get another. So these little triangles, I think, really help you to look at your color palette and kind of see how everything's working along. So there we go. There's the palette. So it's not in your face red, but it definitely, I feel, has a mixture of that New Year's Eve bling and a little bit of that holiday red. Okay, so there it is. So let me move these off my table. Let me lift this up a little bit. And let's first start with, I want to show you how I attached the button. Now, if you guys know how to do the flat macrame knot, then you'll be all set. If you don't, you're going to see me do it in a bit, right? I'm not going to do it at this very second, but I am just going to show you what I did to connect it. So here's the button. Okay, right here. And I want to show you this photo that I took when I was making the piece. So you can see here on the left-hand side what I did, and you can see here right at the very top where the thread goes into the shank of the button. I cut a piece, you can see it right there, right up there. I cut a piece of the Ceylon in fine, like this. And I cut, I don't know, I didn't need that much. So maybe I cut like, I don't know, 18 inches, maybe half a yard. Okay. And I brought it through the shank, the button shank, right here. Okay. Kind of hard to see because it's focusing on the photo, but it goes right through the button shank. Then I started doing my flat macrame stitch, flat, flat macrame, flat, flat macrame. And that length that you're asking, you're all, okay, well, what length is that, Kate? Well, I'll tell you. That length was about 1.5 inches, okay, on this side, about 1.5 inches. Then what I did was I got the loop, because usually this loop would go through the shank of my button, okay? But instead, I just created a loop by attaching it to my board, also doing some macrame down, I don't know, about 3/4 of an inch. So I had these two completed. Okay, makes sense? Now, what I did then was I folded, you can see where that macrame has come down, that beaded macrame. That plain macrame went through this loop, looped around the back, and then I just macrameed over the whole connection here to bring the loop together. And then I glued and thread burned it away. So it comes down and around, through that loop, back up, it meets together. Then these two sections are macrameed together with that same thread all the way up to the top to create that loop to close it up. Okay. Then I was ready to go. I had my 2 strands of leather cord coming out from this beaded flat macrame, and then I was ready to do my S knot that I'm going to show you right now. Okay. So, and you can use, so people are asking about threads and stuff like that. You can use any type of heavier beading thread that you like. I'm using the Ceylon and Fine. You could also use the Eslon. You could also use Chinese knotting cord in a 0.4. All of those will work. Okay, so use whatever it is you like. I chose this Fine because I had the 8/0 seed beads there, and I like the way the fine in the thread and the whole of the 8/0 work together nicely. Okay, but it would also work with a regular cord would work through that 8/0, or you can also jump up to a 6/0 and make this larger and use the Ceylon in regular. The micro might be a little skinny, but you could use it, right? If you wanted to. Okay, doesn't make any difference really. But also the 0.4 Chinese knotting cord would also work. Okay, so now this leather knot, shall we get to it? There is nothing to it. Seriously, it's really simple. Okay. And yeah, Janice is asking, can the regular Ceylon go through the hole of the button? It sure can. There's plenty of room there. There's plenty of room there. You can see, even if I turn it, there's a little bit of air there. Okay. So what I did, I'm going to put this aside here. And I have some leather cord that's ready to go. So I'm going to show you this with some scrap leather. This would also be a really good piece just to have as a bracelet itself, right? So you can just do it on its own and not part of a larger wrap. So what I would do is I would get a bead or whatever it is that you want it to go through. In this case, I'm just going to lash it down to my tray with this little loop here. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about how much leather I used, okay, before we go any further. I chose the garnet leather in the 1.5 millimeter in the Greek leather because I loved the color, okay? The way that this Greek leather comes, it comes in lengths of 5 meters. That's how we sell it, okay? You could use leather that's a little smaller. It could be the 1 millimeter, though this knot is going to be a little smaller here as well. Okay. Conversely, you could go up to the 2 millimeter and everything is going to be enlarged a little bit. So I use the 1.5. Now what I did for the length of what I cut, because when I do these bracelets, I don't plan that far in advance. Number one, I like to kind of design by the seat of my pants. I think it's fun. Number two, I want to make sure that I've got enough leather so that if I change course in the middle of what I'm doing, I've got enough leather. Though I could always add it and stuff, right? But what I did was for this, I cut 4 meters, folded it in half, and so there's 2 meters on this side, 2 meters on this side. That's kind of long, you know, but that, and then I had a meter left over, and that's what I did this knotting length with. If you're going to use our Indian leather that I have here, this is the Indian, and then this is the also the Indian in that pyrite color, right? Then I would use 3 yards. I'd cut 3 yards for your bracelet, find the center, go through here, do your macrame. So you'd have 1.5 yards on each side, and then retain 1 yard to do this knotted section here. Okay, that's what I would do. So let's pretend that this has the macrame and everything already up here. Okay, and I've attached it to the board. You can see here with just a little piece of thread. I'm going to do that same thing over here with just my clamps so that the base of what I'm macrameing around is tight. All right, so let me move this light a little bit. That's a little too shadowy. Bear with me here just a second. I'm going to get a little more ambient light there. There we go. That's not too bad. And I want, so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing here. Okay. So you're going to take this yard of leather. This is both the 1.5 millimeter. This, you can see I use the same color, right? This, I'm going to use this distressed brown for the base and the pyrite over the top. Okay, so I'm going to find my center. Now, essentially, what you're going to do is, let me see if I can center this so you guys can see. And I'm going to try and be really aware of my hands so I don't block it too much. But I'm going to go over this again and again. So just stick with me for this, okay? It's not that hard. I'm going to come in and I'm going to stabilize this cord underneath with the index finger of my dominant hand. In this case, that's my right hand. Okay? And I'm going to come in with my left hand. I'm going to cross the left hand thread over the center. And you can see how that's a beginning of kind of an S shape. And I'm going to bend the leather back over the center cord. And can you see how I've created that S right there? Okay. So now my left hand holds on to all of this. The first stitch is always a little funny, so bear with me. I'm going to get my right hand and get that right hand leather piece. And I'm going to cross over from the left to the right on the right hand side of this center strand. Now I'm going to bring that thread that I just used to cross underneath the center strand and up through that loop and tighten. That's it, you guys. Okay, let me do it again. This first one always looks a little funny. You can't really see that S because it's coming around the back, but now you really will. Okay, and you're going to tighten both at the same time. So here's my left hand, and the left hand leather and the right hand leather always start and end on the same side. Okay, so here is this. There you can see that loop now really nicely. And bring it back on itself over that center. So I've created an S. Now I pick up the right hand and I go all the way over both of those strands to the left hand side here. Bring it under the center strand and up and through that loop. And now I tighten everything. Now what I want, this is where your awl really comes in handy. And if I can find my awl, let me see, here it is. I can come in. What your goal is here is to make these loops on the right and the left side an even length. Okay? Let me get a little tighter here, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do a few so you can see how these kind of come up. You could also use, I had a knitting needle here. This is actually a little needlework tool, but you can also use like a knitting needle if you have trouble with your awl. You can kind of get a knitting needle in there to kind of even everything out. Okay, so let's do another S. From the left over the top, do a hairpin turn right around, take our right hand, go over both strands to the left. I reach under the center strand, pull it underneath, and up through that right hand loop. Okay, and as what I do is I kind of tighten that right hand one first and then that left hand, and then everything kind of falls into place. Let me do it again. This is called, it really had no name. Melanie's asking about this probably is some kind of macrame stitch or something. Emily sent me a tiny video snippet, I think that she saw on like Facebook Reels or I don't know, somewhere where she got it. But she said, look at this. And I said, oh, Emily, that's so clever. So I'm calling it just a figure S knot or a figure S stitch. But it was originally done, I saw the original in like a very big, like 8.8 millimeter or 1 millimeter Chinese knotting cord. Okay, so this comes around again from the left to the right, make that hairpin curve, then make the hairpin curve back. Okay, from the right to the left over all of that you just did. Get that, whoops, stay there. There we go. Get your right hand index finger underneath that center strand, up through that loop. I tighten that right hand one first, and then the left. And you can kind of come in and fix it a bit. So there we go. It actually makes up pretty quickly. I'm going to go a little bit more at Kate speed here, so I've got a little more to show you guys. Okay, so, and this, there was a question I saw in the comments about, is this going to be a kit? You can go, you guys, right over to, let me just put this up so you can see it here. You can go right up to beadshop.com and you'll see this project called Garnet Gala, and you'll have a list of all the materials that you need, of course, of all of the ones, everything that we sell. So you can choose your own adventure, as I like to say, with your own colorway, or the exact colors that I've used here, you can choose and make the one that I'm making as well. So it just depends. You may want a stash dive for this. I see in the comments that people are saying, I've got so many beads I've got to use. Well, I don't know what you all are waiting for. Let's get in there and make our resolution for 2022 that we're going to use some of those beads and make some of those projects. So see how I just came in, created that figure S, lock it in over the top from the right to the left, reach under and up and through, and pull it through. You know, we all gain our inspiration from so many places, you know, and I just feel that it's important, you know, because there's nothing new under the sun, right? I just feel it's real important to kind of put your own spin on things, you know, and create your own techniques from all of the inspiration that's out there. So I urge you to, you know, take the sum of the parts of this and then go wild, you know, make what I make, do it. If you want to follow it exactly to the bead, I love that too. But it's also great when you kind of take this smorgasbord of techniques and start to create your very own inventions. So can you see how that comes together? Look at how gorgeous that looks. I really like it. I think that you could also do something with beads here on the side. As you bring it around, you could place, like, I don't know what kind of bead would go there, something that has a larger hole. You can also see the back, and you can see the color, the different color running through the back. It really looks interesting and beaded. Maybe you could put a bead in the middle there so it would, not have a front and a back. It would just be two-sided with a different look on both sides. So I don't know. See whatever works for you guys with that. Okay. So let me show you how I closed this off, because that presented a little bit of a challenge to me. Okay, so here you can see, and I wanted this section throughout this bracelet. I'm going to use the flat macrame. Sometimes I'll use the silk wrap, but I wanted this to echo the flat macrame with the beads at the beginning and at the end of this piece, so it had some symmetry there. Okay, so so we're going back and forth here, loop, loop, loop. And can you see here at the end, when I've come in, and when you start to make that first figure S at the top, that's when I stopped there, okay? And then with the right hand, I kind of came through and I crossed it, and I glued both of those down, and then I started my macrame over the top. So let me show you how I did that, because you want this to be as neat as you can get it, really. So let me show you. Whoops. Get on the board here. How am I doing? Okay, good. We've got plenty of time here. So, and I'm sure all of you are so inventive and clever. This is how I wanted to do it to create another section in my wrap. But if this were just a bracelet that I was working on, I might bring all of these in together and put them all in a crimp maybe or something here. But this is how I would finish it off to continue on with my wrap bracelet. So I used my Zap glue because I wanted something that was fast drying. Okay. So I'm going to come in, let me even these out. I came in and I added just a drop of the Zap right there on the center. Okay. And yes, when I say flat knot, that's just the flat square macrame knot. Yes. Thank you, Cara, for helping me clarify that. And I'm going to show that here in just a second. So see how I bring my leather around like I'm going to continue to do that figure S from the left to the right. That Zap just sets up so fast. So I bring it across where I've glued it. I said, see how that glue sets up so fast. Did I not give myself enough glue? I probably didn't. Let me add another little dot of glue. There we go. Now bring that around so it looks like it's looping. I'm just going to hold it in place for a moment with my awl. There we go. You can also kind of hold it in place with your baggie over the top. Again, the thing that I like about the Zap so much is that it does set up so quickly. Hopefully I didn't glue my awl to the leather. There we go. Now with the right hand side, I'm going to cross it over. This, for some reason, doesn't want to stick. Needs a little more pressure on there. Not unlike the pressure I am feeling to get this right. There we go. Now I'm gonna just come in and give myself a little clip, a little kind of angle cut there to cut that away. And I'm going to come in, this is giving me a little bit of sass. I don't know why it is. Probably because I've got all of you watching. It's giving me sass. But as I come in and tie knots over the top of it, it's also going to hold. So I'm not super concerned. I just need this to hold this shape before I come in and tie. Okay? Because my other one did just fine. My Greek leather one did. So I don't know what the problem is here. So see here, I'm going to cross this over like I have done this stitch before it. I'm going to add a little more glue right here. If I had my trusty toothpicks like I do at the studio in Redwood City, I would have them kind of to help me spread that out, but I think that looks okay. And we're just going to hold that there for just a second. I did it first without glue, and everything kind of slipped around a little bit. You could do it that way, but I found that little addition of the zap glue would work. Lynn is also saying one of those Tierracast leather crimps would work and look great here. It would. It really would. You can push all of these ends into a leather crimp and it would look great. So see here, there we go. And I just used the baggie to give myself a little bit more pressure. That pressure there helps to bond it together, and the leather, the baggie peels away in case there's any extra glue on the top of it there. Okay. And Lynn is also saying, can I use 2mm leather? You sure can. You can use the 2mm. It'll just enlarge everything a step, right? Which is fine. So now I'm going to get my thread here. This is Ceylon in Fine. It's the exact same thread that I used when I for this other one. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to clip this leather pretty close right up here. And I'm using my thread snips. What I should be using, and actually what I'm going to grab, is my wire cutters to give myself a nice kind of clean angle cut. Okay. So Michelle is asking, do I find the painted finish on the Greek leather kind of cracks? I made an expedition bracelet and the garnet leather finish got cracks in it. You know, Michelle, I have not had that issue. And I'm not sure why you would get that, other than maybe the leather dried out a little. I'm sorry that happened. It hasn't really happened to me. Maybe you might want to get some leather conditioner and condition the leather so it stays supple, maybe before you use it. But you can see here's the Greek leather here, and the color coding, you know, I think it eventually with wear, it may show some signs, but it looks pretty good to me. So no, I'm sorry you had that experience. I have not had that happen to me. So can you see how I really clipped that X kind of tight up against the leather, and that glue is kind of holding everything. So I've got my fine Ceylon, and now I'm just going to come in. Let me get rid of that baggie. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to come in and I'm going to make my first flat macrame knot. So I come in, I'm going to make my loop on my left-hand side, bring this strand down over the right, under the middle, and up through the left. We have a great skill builder on this flat macrame knot if you're not familiar. And then I'm going to kind of move it up so it sits. See where that X, let me get tight right there. Okay, so that kind of pulls everything together, holds everything up. I don't know why this wants to tilt, but it does. So I'm just gonna tell it who's the boss. There we go. So now I'm going to do it from the right. I make my loop over the left, under the middle, and up through that loop and tighten. And your macrame is going to kind of cover these ends. You kind of have to place it where you want it right at the very beginning. I'm going to do a couple more, but see how that now gets tightened down pretty nicely. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to go a little bit faster here. There we go. From the left and then to the right. And can you see how that's pulling everything together from the bottom here? And you can just add your beads. If I wanted to add beads, I'll start from the left here. I'll put a bead on, and I'll put the bead on the side that I'm going to loop. So there's the loop, and I just kind of ignore the bead, come over the strand, under the center strand, and up through the loop and tighten. Now I'll do the same thing on the opposite side. Put on my bead, over, under, up, and through the center. Now, I'm also thinking in my head what the next section of my bracelet's going to be. Okay, so I need to add some thread here because what I did was after I did that beaded section, you can see it right here, I started my laddering. Okay, so I had to add my thread. Now adding the thread for this was actually pretty simple to do, and I'm going to show you how I do that. I cut a nice long piece of thread, like probably 2 yards. I'm going to cut this a little bit shorter so I don't have so much to deal with. And let me get a needle. I'm using a size 10 sharp. As you know, that's my favorite for this infinity stitch. And that's what I'm doing, the infinity stitch with this. Not your traditional laddering, but the infinity with the skinny thread. Let's go ahead and needle our thread, as Emily says. You get the eye of the needle and place it right on your thread there. So it goes through. Wax or not, depending on what you want. If I had wax here, I might do it, but I don't have any sitting here in front of me, so I'm not gonna. Okay. I'll put it here. I'll turn it to the back. Okay. And I'm just gonna put my needle through. This is where that glue is, so it's a little tight, so I'm gonna go below it. And I'm gonna just slide my needle underneath these threads that I've macrameed around. Okay. Now, before I, whoops, I pulled it all the way through. I was going to say, before I pulled it all the way through, I'm going to add a little bit of glue. So let me do that again. Make sure I'm not splitting any of these threads. There we go. This time I'm going to get my GS Hypo Cement. And I'm going to add a little bit of GS here at the back, kind of in between the cords there. And I'm going to put a little bit on this KO thread. I'm going to get the lid back on the KO here. Bear with me. Here, there we go. And I'm going to pull this through. And I'm not going to pull it all the way through. I'm still going to have some tail left there. Let's connect this back. And I'm going to continue to do a little bit of macrame so I capture. Here's my KO with the needle. See how it's here? I'm going to capture that KO and the leather underneath these flat macrame knots. Now I can keep adding more beads if I want to, but I'm just going to, for sake of speed, just do a few more. You can go to beadshop.com to our skill builders. It's under learning, under skill builders. I've done a lot of kind of basics there, wire wrapping, macrame stitches, the briolet wrap, all of those are there listed. So it's a great learning resource for you, all printed out there. And you can, some of them have PDFs that you can download. So there we go. You can see I've captured that KO in there and we're all good to go. I'm going to blot a little bit of that extra glue. It's going to dry, no problem. Let's pretend though that I have glued all of this. I'm going to add a drop of glue. I don't glue anything. Usually I wait overnight to let everything sit. Okay, but in the interest of broadcasting time and just as a demo. And those of you who know my metalwork and who have taken my metalworking classes, you know that I'm a big fan of working in samplers, right? So if these techniques, if you're new to these techniques, just make a little sampler like I'm doing with some of the scraps that you have laying around. That will help you hone your skill. So then you're kind of familiar, you know, with this leather stitch and with this flat macrame stitch. Then you're not worried that you're practicing on your real piece, if that makes sense. Then you won't have any like emotional attachment to it or things like that. And then just finish this little sampler. Then you'll be ready to tackle your real piece. So I'm going to use my thread burner and I'm going to come in and I'm just going to thread burn these sides away. What I do is before I hit the tip with the thread burner, I press the button, get the tip warm, and just lightly, see how I lightly just tapped it. You don't want to lay the thread burner on your thread because it's hot. And if you let the thread burner contact your thread too long, you're going to burn right through everything. So just a quick tap is all you need with the thread burner. Something else I want to show you with that thread burner, it's kind of hard for you to see, but I can really see it on this side. The glue's still a little wet, so I, of course, would have the glue not so wet. Can you see there's the tiniest of little stray, like a little bump there from the thread, little leftover bump. What you can do is tamp that down. I'm going to turn on the thread burner, heat it up, and give it just a little tap, the tiniest of taps. That will take that little extra tip of thread down, but you don't want to be heavy-handed with that in the least, or again, you're going to burn through. Okay, but that cauterizes the thread. Now you can see that that glue is wet. We would wait until the glue is dry to do all of that. I like to wait overnight. But now you can see, here's the leather that you've done, and this is ready to start your laddering. So can you see here that my KO thread, if I get it here, and I get my leather here, and I put my leather strands on my board. Let me pull the camera out a little bit so you can see this a little bit better. A little bit higher here. There we go. I'll put my cord, I'll actually have a couple of clampers here. One here and one here. And now I'll be able to start my laddering. Okay. That's real. Okay. So Mary has a great question. Why not use the zap glue when adding the thread? Great question, Mary. The zap is stiff. It's like super glue, right? So I used it here under my leather because it's fast acting, but wherever I add it, it stiffens the piece, okay? Because it's like super glue. The GS Hypo is more of a flexible glue. So if I had used it on this section, see how I can still bend this so it's a nice curve around the wrist. If this was zap, it would be super stiff like this. Okay, if that makes sense. So zap when I want something fast and hold, to really hold. GS Hypo when I want that connection to still be flexible. Okay, if that makes sense to you. Great question there. So now when I add this, just to jog your memory, and then we're going to get to this finished one, okay? Remember that when you start your wrap bracelet, we taper down, right? So I'm going to start my taper with an 8/0 bead. So let me get a little closer here, like so. And that 8/0, excuse me while I take a little bit of coffee. That 8/0 is going to start here, then I'm going to go from 1 to 2, and then I'll jump up to my bugle. So it makes a nice gradual taper there. Okay? And also, always for my first strand, my first bead, I always go through twice. So I'm going to come in from the back, from behind here. And you can see that my thread is already coming from behind because I attached it on the back of my strand. So here's my 8/0. It comes through. It's going to nestle right in between those strands of leather. And my thread is going to go under the left-hand side of my leather. I'm sorry, the right-hand side of my leather. Okay, and I'm going to, again, the first one is always a little difficult to deal with. Okay, there we go. So now, here is my bead coming up from behind. I pass my needle around the right-hand cord through the hole of the bead, and now down and underneath the left-hand side. And see how that just pulls it right into place. Okay. So now I'm going to cement that bead in place by going through one more time. So I'm coming from behind around the left-hand side, through the hole of the 8/0, being really careful only to go through the hole, not to nick the leather or the other threads, under the cord and around. Now, up and over the right-hand side, through the bead hole, and down and under the left-hand cord. Okay, so now I'm going to go with 2 beads because we're going to taper that up. We need to taper this up to the size of the bead that we're going to use throughout this section of laddering. So I've got my 2. I'm coming from behind the left-hand cord, over the left-hand cord, and nestle in between. Notice how I am using a double strand of this KO, right? I'm using it doubled. Now I'm coming below the right hand, up and over, back through those 2 beads, go all the way through, and dip it down and under. Now, what you want to be looking for, you guys, to really make sure that your laddering is as clean as it can be. See how this row is kind of leaning down a little bit? You can get your awl and kind of move everything so it's sitting in the correct position. Now I'm going to show you, I'm going to add a bugle bead next because that's what's next in that pattern. I'm going to show you how I use my awl actually pretty often to help me make each stitch around the leather look the best that it can. So see, here's this. I go through from the left. I'm going to wedge that bugle in there. I'll go through, not catching any of the threads. Now watch what I do with my awl. See how I put my awl through that loop and I kind of pull it so that the threads are nice and even. I pull it tight so the awl is in there, and then I tighten and pull it out. Okay, then I bring this thread underneath. There we go. Okay. And I want to make sure that's even. And what you do to kind of set the stage for these beginning stitches is going to hold you all the way through as you do this section. I'm going to do one more, and then we're going to do a 2-hold bead. Okay, so I go through from the left to the right, push that bugle in using the index finger of my non-dominant hand. I go back through, and as I tighten, I can insert the awl into that loop, and it helps me make a really clean stitch. And then I dip my needle underneath. Okay. So now, here is my Checkmate's tile. 2 holes. So we treat each of these holes as if they were a single bead, right? So I go through that top hole, under the leather, and back over the leather and through that same hole. I don't pop down to the second hole here, right? I have to complete that thread path through the first hole. There we go. Now that that one's complete, I drop down and I complete the second hole and around. And you don't have to do this trick with the awl, but sometimes, I don't know, I feel like it really helps to make both sides nice and even. Okay, like this. So let me add 2 more bugles, and then I'm going to show you how I would add or take away thread. Like, let's say that I've been, I cut a shorter piece or whatever, right? It's actually very easy to do. And I've shown you this before, but I want to show you again on this year-end wrap, because this is a great way to just hone your skills, right? You don't have to plan what it is you're doing. Just create your color palette, figure out, remember the steps that I put up on the broadcast at the very beginning. Choose your color palette, plan however many wraps. I'm actually going to put 3 of these here. Choose your threads, and then just take each portion of this section by section. You don't have to decide the design all the way through. Okay. See how when I put the awl there, I pull my threads on the left-hand side so that it's nice and even. That's what really happens here. And as I tighten, both threads are tightening at the same rate. So there isn't a little bit of, extra thread coming out there. So let's say that I needed to add thread, right? I've gone down and I just have maybe, 4 inches of thread left. So I'm going to add a new thread to this. So I cut my new thread. I leave my old thread where it is. Okay. I cut my new thread and I'm going to thread a needle on it. So let me get another size 10. And we're going to needle that thread by placing the eye of the needle on the thread. We're going to double it over. And now no knots, no glue. I'm just going to come in and I'm going to go up maybe 3 bugle beads worth. And I'm going to go through this top bugle right here. And I'm not going to go around the leather. This is just like weaving in a seed bead section. I'm going to pop to that one and see how that extra thread just sits right here against these 2 beads. You can't tell at all. And I'm going to go through this bead. And actually, I needed one more bead on here because I want to end it where I started it. So let's just pretend that I had one more bead. Because I want this thread to come out where the needle of the original thread also comes out. See how when I don't use my awl, trying to rush, there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to come in and take this thread and come out. Here's my new thread. Here's my old thread. So my old thread, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to weave this up. So I'll take that one through. And also go up about 3 beads. Though the thread in here, it's not overly tight. Still, I've still got some room. Here we go. So now, under tension, I'll come in clip away the tail of the new thread and the section with a needle attached on the old thread. And now my new thread is in position and ready to ladder, right? And you can't tell a thing, right? Super easy. Okay. So let's take a look at the bracelet itself and let's talk about measuring. Okay. Let me reposition myself a little bit here. I'm sliding off of my chair. So I think that this bracelet is going to be a 5 wrap. That's what I'm thinking, though you never know what's going to happen here. Let me move this over. There we are. Make some room here so I know I've got some space to work. So here's my first section. Okay, that leather section that I made, the button section here. So let me measure these out. These should all come to be about 7 inches-ish, right? This one's about 6.5. I want each to be between 6.5 and 7 inches. My wrist, so this is how I do it. My wrist is 6.5 inches. Okay, so each wrap, depending on the width of the beads, needs to be 6.75 to 7 inches to fit. Okay, so the way that I like to do it is I get my tape measure. This is the tape measure that Emily gave me. And I like a nice big sturdy tape measure. I'm going to wrap it around my wrist 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And I need a little bit of give there, right? Like this. Okay. So I'm going to say that my total length, if I do each wrap at about 7 inches, it's going to be about 35 inches, 5 wraps, 5 times 7 is 35. Okay. So that's kind of my target. As I get closer to 35 inches with the entire bracelet, that's when I really have to try it on to make sure that it's the right length. So what I've got here so far, this should be total about 14 inches. Let's see what it is so far. Because this could be a little shorter, this could be a little longer. And I measure it from like where that button is. So I'm coming up a little short. This is like 13. So I need to just make sure that as I go along, my sections are going to be big enough. It doesn't matter so much here because the last one, you can size everything correctly with the last wrap, right? It doesn't matter, right? So here you can see if I wrap it around once, and the more wraps you have, the longer the piece actually needs to be, right? Because it takes up more room. So see, you can see it actually is fitting pretty well. I'm a little short there, but not too bad. Okay. So my next strand, let me tell you the next section I'm going to do. I'm going to use the 4mm fire polish for this one. And I still have plenty of KO. Can you see? It's kind of hard for you to see here. I can hardly see it. Here's my KO. I didn't cut away my thread when I was finished with the section, the previous section. I just carried it along underneath the flat macrame. So now I'm ready to bring it out and use it for my next section. Now you don't have to do the flat macrame to delineate between the sections on your wrap. You could use crimps, you could do a silk wrap, Just depends on what you wanted to do. I've been using the flat macrame sections lately because I kind of like how they look, and especially adds a little bit of extra flair when you do this beaded macrame. And everything was a little tangled, so now we're good to go. There we go. I'm going to come in and clamp this down. And I've glued these previously, these pieces here. So I'm going to come in and thread burn these off. Okay. And I can come back in and tamp those ends down a little bit later. Okay. So here we go. So now, see that I've clamped it here and here. I'm going to use my KO spool to kind of put them in the center, put it in the center here so it kind of splays open those strands. Let me see if I can find the little place where this thread goes. There it is. So now it kind of opens that up for me. So I've been thinking about this next section that I'm going to do. I really want to use these fire polish, okay? And I want this one to be a little more monochromatic with a flash of red. So I think maybe not the tiles because I use them. Maybe I'll use the tiles further down. Maybe these. Okay, so let's see when this is ready. All right. So I'm going to start with an 8/0 because that will help me taper up. Oh, and it's almost noon. Gosh. Well, I'll do this and then we'll. So today we're going to run a little long. Oh, well. I had so much to show you with these wraps. So here comes that 8/0. I'm going to go back through. And as you know, I don't like to keep these on my mat because they're going to spill. I'm going to come in and I'm going to repeat that thread path. Some people don't do this. They don't double the thread in their first one. I don't know why I do. It just gives me a little extra assurance that this bead is going to stay where I put it. So there it is. Okay. So now, let me use this red one next. And again, I have no idea how this pattern's going to look, but you and I are going to find out together. I just want to make sure that these 11/0, to take a look at the 11/0 that I've chosen. I feel like they're going to add some flash to this. So here are these. That'll go under. Now, I need to check and see how many 8/0 I need that are the same length as this 4mm fire polish. And I think it's 2. Can you see? I'm pretty far away. There we go. Okay. So I think 2 8/0 and 1 fire polish will work. So I'm going to get my 8s. I'm going to put in 2 rows of 8/0. So it was a good question about your strands on the left. Lanny is asking this. I find that my threads on the left side tend to separate. So if I had wax here, Lonnie, I would probably wax it. That helps. Number 2, when I use that awl, so see how I pulled them through, and I pull them both to make sure that they sit together pretty tightly. I'll come around, I'll go back through these 2. I'll get my awl at the ready, and see how I've got it way even out here. I'll tighten that loop. I'll make everything tight so that this loop is tight, so those 2 threads around the leather on the opposite side are also tight. So that helps me get these stitches pretty nice and tight. 2 of these. Then I'm going to put in the 11/0, and let's see if that'll work. I'm going to go a little more at Kate speed because we are running over just a little bit today. But it is the last broadcast of the year. I'm not going to be broadcasting on Friday, on New Year's Eve. But we'll be back in 2022 with a great beginning of the year project. So there are my 2. Now I wanted just a tiny slip of red. I think that maybe 3 11/0, maybe 4. 1. Gosh, these are small. I told you I was going to be upset that I had these tiny little beads. Here's these 4. Let's see how they fit. Or is 3 better? I think 3 is better. Hard to see. I think 3 is good. Yeah, I just do like 2 passes in between, and it should be fine. I think that 3 is what I want. So I go under the leather, over, back through those tiny 11/0. The payoff better be good for these tiny beads, everybody. Of course, I've got a little bit of a tangle, but it's dealt with. You just tell that thread that you're in charge. Pull it tight, pull it through. There we go. Let's get that fire polish on there. See how it looks. Fire polish seems giant after that 11/0. And back through. Secret to that good stitch, keep everything nice and tight as you pull it through, so the 2 threads act as 1. And then 3 more 11/0. 1, 2, 3. And I think that little slice of red next to that bead looks pretty darn good, if you ask me. And I don't know if you asked, but I'm telling. There we go. Now, we just repeat the pattern. And I can take out this KO now because I have, I've got the space there. Okay. So now, let me do those 8/0. So yeah, you can decide what works for you. If you're like, there is no way on God's green earth that I am going to use 11/0 in this wrap, then leave them out. Do it. I'm kind of wishing I had done the same right now. No, that's not true. I like how they look. And I could do, instead of just one row, I could kind of increase the impact of these 11/0 by maybe doing 2 or 3 rows of them. But let's just see how this looks. And you can change this up. This is going to be a little bit of a skinnier section than the section before it, which I like. I like to kind of mix up the widths of each wrap as well. Yeah, this looks really nice. I'll do one more section of these guys and then we will call it a day for this for now. There we go. Put this around. See, tighten that thread and pull, and then it's nice and even. Look at that. I think it looks really pretty, right? Yeah, and this is a good question, or a good comment, Pam. Something she learned while she does infinity stitch, move all those tools because you'll be catching your threads on everything. They're like a thread magnet. It is true. So that's why I moved all of my little trays and everything off of my tray, because they are like thread magnets. That is for darn sure. Okay. So here is that little section. You can see how that's going to look next to it. I'll bring that thread burner in and tamp down those little tiny ends. So this is going to be the third of my 5 wraps for this piece. So I'm going to finish this guy off, and you're going to see you guys have been asking for the Budapest wrap as well as for the finish of this wrap. So we're going to do that finishing on the 7th of January, that free tip Friday on the 7th. I'll be back on the, whatever that Wednesday is, the 5th, I guess it is. Saturday, January 5th will be our next broadcast. I can't believe it that we are moving right into 2022. Let me move myself in here. There we go. We get this over here. There we are, so you can see me. So I will show you the ending of our, there it is, year-end wrap. We'll also do that Budapest wrap that was with the September mix. I've got that guy done as well, and I'll show you how to close off the button loop, and we're yeah, not Saturday. Is that the right? Do I have the right dates? Let me make sure. So yes, I'll be back Wednesday, January 5th, and we'll finish this up on Friday, January 7th, on that free tip Friday. Just making sure that I have the right dates there, because you guys, it's 2022. Well, also on the 1st, you guys, we have a new year of monthly mixes from beadshop.com. I have one here. I'm just going to give you a quick little look at it. Next year in 2022, our theme for the months are birthday month flowers. And so January's flower is carnation. So you'll see this drop on the 1st. So I wanted to say a big thank you to all of you all for being with us here in this kind of challenging year that 2021 has been. But we're still here, we're still healthy, we're still happy, and we're very, very grateful for all of you out there who watch us on a very consistent basis, or if you're brand new to us watching on the many places we're broadcasting today, thank you so much for joining me. We would not be here without the support of you guys out there that make it possible for us to do what we love. So here on beadshop.com, you can find us every Wednesday and Friday, with the exception of this Friday, at 10:30 a.m. Pacific. You can find us also on all of our different social media outlets here for Beadshop, at beadshop.com on Instagram, at the Bead Table on Facebook. You can also like and subscribe to us on beadshop.com on our YouTube channel, whether you're watching this live or on replay. You can also find me doing all kinds of things over on my personal Insta at BeadKate. Like and subscribe over at Kate Richburg on my YouTube channel. And I'd love to see you over in my group, Create with Kate Richburg, and my page, Kate Richburg Jewelry Educator. So that being said, you guys, I also, before I get a little mushy, thank you all for watching. You can find all the information on the project and the products from today's broadcast right on our website, right here at beadshop.com. Sign up for the newsletter because we've got great things planned for January, you guys. So again, before I get super mushy and tell you all how grateful we are for you during this 2022, I did want to mention all of those things. But thank you, thank you, because as I said, without all of you out there supporting our small business here at beadshop.com, we wouldn't be able to do what we love. So you'll see more metal content from me on my personal pages coming up in the new year. You'll see much more beady content continuing right here on beadshop.com. And again, thank you. I will see you in 2022. Stay safe, stay healthy, keep wearing those masks, you guys. This new variant is crazy, but we're going to stay safe, stay as well and as healthy as you can. Wash those hands, social distance as much as you can. I know it's fatiguing, but let's keep doing our best to stay healthy so we can stay as creative and as we can in the upcoming new year. Happy New Year, everybody. Who knows what 2022 is going to bring, but we're ready for it. Thanks so much, all. We'll talk to you all soon. Happy New Year.